pleasure to take this call. Mr. Chair, the opposition has been going on and on about heating and ventilation. So I would like to talk about Clause 13, which amends Section 45 of the Residential Tenancies Act, which states the landlord's obligations. And yes, the landlord's obligation does not include heating and ventilation as minimum requirements. And there are significant reasons for that, Mr. Chair. Number one is the evidence, because the evidence shows that most benefits in terms of health outcomes related to cold houses can be obtained by insulating uninsulated houses rather than adding heating to insulated houses. So it's based on evidence. Yes, I understand it's technical, it's difficult to comprehend, and that's why a technical advisory group was set up to look into warrant of fitness idea. And that group did come up with the ventilation for bathroom ideas, but then later on they dropped that as minimum requirement because they realized that that's linked to the behavior of the person in the house. So it will be the tenant's behavior to operate, to ventilate in the bathroom. So given the lack of evidence, Mr. Chair, of adding all these requirements on top of the requirements which are in this bill, I don't see any sense in that. I don't see any sense in that, Mr. Speaker. This is all based on evidence, and based on evidence, we are focused on insulation. A second point, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about is Clause 6, and I also want to talk about Green members' SOP. I do not support that SOP. The Green member says that there should be calculation indicating increases in rent. That is not possible, Mr. Speaker, because all landlords, we should not assume, we can't base this on any baseless assumptions that all landlords will be able to absorb the cost that we keep imposing on them. Every landlord is in a different situation. Some can put heat pumps and may not pass on the cost to the tenants, but others might have to because they can't just simply afford it. And second thing, Mr. Chair, is that landlords love to have long-term tenants. But sometimes if landlords want their property back for some reason, they should be able to give notice to their tenant to get their property back. And in Clause 6, it also requires landlords to specify the extent of insulation, and they are required to include that in the tenancy agreement. And if the house is exempt from that requirement, then also they are required to provide that statement in the tenancy agreement. And that is a good thing, Mr. Chair, because we are putting the responsibility on landlords to assess the property and provide that assessment and statement accordingly to their tenant. And yes, if tenants feel that they have been given wrong information, they are not satisfied with the state of the house, that doesn't match with the statement that is provided by the landlord, then they can get independent assessment done, they can go to tenancy tribunal, and they can get a work order issued for work to be done on that property. Yeah, we heard about warrant of fitness for houses, Mr. Chair. We have been hearing that continuously from the opposition. But with warrant of fitness kind of idea, with having an independent body assessing houses, it's going to cost. Yes, it does cost. These things does cost. And Mr. Chair, MB did a cost-benefit analysis. Yes, cost-benefit analysis are important. You can't dismiss them. The cost-benefit analysis said that it will cost $100 million a year. $100 million a year, Mr. Chair. And yes, landlords will pass that cost to tenants. So if I break it down to per house, it comes to $225 a year for a tenant. And this is without providing any additional benefits. So how is it fair to pass on this kind of cost to tenants when there is no benefit for them? And the member opposite, Penehenare, he spoke about a family he knows that is left with just $15 after paying their rent. This is $15 per week. And if this cost of $225 is passed on to that family will be left with just $10 a week. How fair is that? It is not fair, Mr. Chair. So we don't think that having that idea of warrant of fitness is also good. And if I speak about, Mr. Chair, the amounts for unlawful act, I believe that they are very reasonable after the changes that have come after the select committee process, especially for the breaches in section 54.3, that is for retaliatory termination notice. We know that these kind of notices are not uncommon. Looking at that, we decided to increase the amount from $2,000 to $4,000. And looking at other amounts which are there for unlawful acts to make sure that landlords are complying and also to make sure that tenants are complying. For example, if tenants, they fiddle with their smoke alarm, they can be fined for up to $3,000. So looking at these things, Mr. Chair, I believe that this is reasonable.
Phil Twyford.
Chairman, the Minister